James Ernest of the Grueling Truth Radio Network here with arm wrestling legend Popeye, also known as Alan Fisher. So, how'd you become Popeye?
I guess it's just a nickname everybody gave me. I always had large forearms compared to my biceps. In fact, I think at one time they actually measured them out almost 16 and a quarter inches. It was a long time ago.
Oh my, wow. That's quite big. How have you been able to stay dominant for over 3 decades?
You know, I have to say that diet plays such a major role in that. Even though I got started in, August 1979, about 21 years ago, I was introduced to the concept of getting my nutrition from food. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking like unprocessed food, like whole food, instead of like Burger King and McDonald's and Jack in the Box and Pizza Hut and all that stuff, right? And along with that came the education to treat my body with respect. And, you know, I have to say, and I'm not trying to push this from the very beginning, but, you know, taking a fruit and vegetable capsules completely changed my life 21 years ago to this whole concept. And I honestly think, number one, that did it. So I've been faithfully using daily, it's called Juice Plus, for the past 21 years. And along with that, I got a great education. The other thing is, I don't put my body through pain like everybody says. You know, you can't grow without pain. You know, you got to have pain to become like the best. I honestly believe and have since day one that you have to learn how to control pain and not pain control you. If you know much about me, James, I'm not a gym rat. I pretty much have stayed out of the gym and mainly just do natural training and learning how the body works, learning physiology. I noticed that doing positive resistance training is much more beneficial than a negative form of exercise. In fact, James, name me, besides weightlifting or arm wrestling, name me a sport that deals with what they call negative exercise.
Negative exercise.
But you guys are all into sports like football and all the other stuff, right?
Yes.
Can you name one?
I was going to guess wrestling or gymnastics.
Okay, wrestling is a lot of it's negative too. Gymnastics can be, but the majority of sports are what they call positive exercise, concentric exercise. And I think because of that, I don't create as much oxidative damage in my body. Plus the fact that I have good diet, I just don't age like most people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like there's a lot of combinations of things going on there. Eating right and not over-exercising and being able to use the correct physiology to it.
Absolutely. Oh, and one more thing. Rest. In order for my body to rebuild, I have to incorporate rest.
Very true. That's one of the things that will baffle me sometimes at the gym. You'll see the fella who's lifting the same body part day in and day out, and like you said, it doesn't have time to rest and recover and rebuild. So if it can't rebuild, it's not ever going to get any bigger. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely.
With being basically ambidextrous in the sport, using both arms, do you have a preference on which arm you use?
That's a great question. You know, I'm left-handed. Some people may not know that because I dominate pretty much the right. I think I have like 3 world titles on my left. But being ambidextrous, you know, if you have the balance there, it's always good in sports to use both. For me, in 1979, I had a massive piece of glass come down and slit my wrist when I was working on a commercial building. I was a glazer back then, and I lost pretty much the use of my left hand, where I cut all my tendons, my arteries, the top nerve, my thumb, both main arteries, And because I don't lift weights, I have never really brought that back to the same size as my right arm. But I do everything like in sports. I do a lot of different things using both left and right hand. Arm wrestling, yeah, I'm not the greatest left-handed arm wrestler in the world. Although I do have a win on Luke Kent, which I'm very proud of.
Oh, wow. So, in other words, not that it's the exact same thing, or no one wants to be compared to Oscar Pistorius nowadays anyway with those off-field issues, but basically you almost had not to be able to use your left arm, but then over rehabbing it and all, were able to bring it back into the fold?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. It's, like I said, it's definitely not the same size as my right, but had I lifted weights like most people, it probably would have been. I mean, I'm very, very coordinated left-handed. I can beat my opponents, most of my opponents, just with the coordination alone. And the fact that I've got built-in speed and know the cadence pretty good.
How do you compete with honor? What's that entail in the sport of arm wrestling?
Oh, what an interesting question. How do I compete with honor? Well, okay, I'm just a man. I'm made of flesh and blood like everybody else. God gave me the body that I have. Even when I first got in the sport, I was not a Christian. But I knew the very first time I actually grabbed somebody's hand, I immediately knew that this is what God wanted me to do the rest of my life. So, honor comes from honoring Him who gave me and made me who I am. I'm a champion because I believe that every part of my being is from Him. And I use it for Him. I've got 26 World Championship trophies that my wife said today, you need to get those off the ground. because they're all covered up with these slats next to my workout room. Titles and trophies and stuff, it's great to be a world champion, but to be able to use that platform that God gave me to go and to help those who are in need is the greatest thing in the world. It's why I still arm wrestle today. I'm almost 62 years old. Is because I want to be able to be used of God somewhere on this planet to share what He means to me and share the gifts that He's given me so I can impart those to others.
How important is intensity in the sport of arm wrestling?
It's everything. The people ask me today, what do I do to train? What can I do? What is arm wrestling all about? And I have to say, having been in this almost 4 decades, the number one thing is your mental focus. When you have been doing this as long as I have, and if you want to become a champion in any sport, you have to have mental focus above your opponent, above anything that you can imagine. So part of that intensity that you're talking about is staying focused no matter what. Going to a competition, training for competition, or even just doing a workout and making sure you have no negative influences in your mind. So there's no, this guy's going to show up to the tournament. Oh, man. There's none of that. There's not an if clause. There's only a win clause. There's only an expectation. So names don't really mean anything to me. One of the greatest arm wrestlers in world history, John Berzink, who everyone knows. When I compete against John, I know he's going to rip my arm off and give it back to me, but I don't ever think that I'm going to go to the competition thinking John Berzink's going to be there. No, the guy that I'm actually challenging around the world is myself. I can't be giving thought to my competitors because it just breaks down who I am. So intensity comes with mind control, I would say, for the most part.
So it sounds like in the sport of arm wrestling, intensity is both a mental and a physical element?
Absolutely. But when you're talking about intensity, you've got a relaxed intensity, which we believe I'm blessed with, or you have an intensity intensity of power and strength and endurance all in one. There's kind of, it's like the difference between fast twitch muscles and slow twitch. You have what you've been getting, and you really can't do much about that. So some people's intensity is the fact that they can just sit there, put their arm on an arm wrestling table, and just hold the guy and almost laugh, and then take him down at will. In other people, it's like, ready to go, and they're moving a gut, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So there's two kinds of intensities.
With being in the sport a long time, how did your training evolve over the years?
Oh, another great question. How did it evolve? Well, when I first got into the sport, like most enthusiasts that want to get in the sport, they try just about every kind of training apparatus that there is. For me, it was, do you know what a chest extender is?
Somewhat. If you could rephrase.
Okay, it's like a thing you hold in your hand, and in between it's like 5 springs, and you pull it apart to stretch the spring.
Oh yes,
so when I first, well, you're old enough, you should know what that is, James. For me, it was like just doing the movement, doing the motions, doing the angles, doing the positions. And that's another thing that I learned over the years, having put on arm wrestling training camps throughout the United States, Europe, and Canada. I learned that a lot of people don't know the very important positions and angles and degrees there are in the sport. So you asked me about how did it evolve. Well, learning those different things, like the 30-degree being the most important thing to me, in the sport of arm wrestling, learning a 30-degree angle.
How much did winning that first title at such a young age, at 23, and then winning your last world title, how important were those wins to you compared to, say, some of the other wins?
With the first world title I won there in Las Vegas, I think it was December of 1980. It was the NAWA, the National Arm Wrestling Association's narrow table tournament. And that class, oh my goodness, that class was one of the most packed arm wrestling weight classes I think I've ever had. They had the best of the best at that time in there. And I remember my coach, I remember several people telling me I needed to watch out for this guy and that guy. I know one guy they told me to watch out for was a guy named John Renfro. And I flew through people like Burt Whitfield, John Winfield. This is quite interesting. My very first match of that tournament was a guy who would become not only one of the greatest known arm wrestlers in history, but we would be a rival for like 15 years, and his name was David Patton. He was my very first match, Virgil Orsororo being the referee there. And at that time, I have to say, if you could pull someone's elbow off the pad, you were declared the winner. I kept pulling David's arm off the pad, and Virgil would not call it. Finally, during the 8th match, I said, that's it. I'm going to loser's bracket. I'm not going to play games anymore. So I went in the loser's bracket. That means I had to go completely undefeated to the final match. The guy who I would have to win that day, another good friend of mine, Jack Popeye Wen. I ended up winning that tournament against Jack. Jack had never, ever beat me in competition, even when he was 250 pounds. But from that to my last world title, there's just so much that went on in between that it was almost like breathing to me. It was fairly simple to win that last world title because everything was like just almost it was like breathing. It was just I was so focused and so ready.
So with all that experience, it had prepared you for it, and it just felt natural. It sounds like.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good way to put it. It still feels that way today, actually.
Obviously, you're not the norm in arm wrestling. When do arm wrestlers usually hit their peak?
Wow, what a great question. Everybody's different about that because we're all made differently. When did they? I have to. Let me throw something else in there that I'm going to go back to the very beginning. You talked about I talked about the mental focus.
Mm-hmm.
When people know when they hit their peak, when they can bring their physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental all together all the time. When they go to a tournament and they can bring that all together so that it's all working in harmony together, I believe they've reached their peak, as it were, that they're ready to take on competition and take on competitors.
If I turn my hat backwards, will that help me in any way?
No. The reason why they did that in the beginning was the caps, the bill was getting in the way of the competitors, was getting in the way of the actual calls by the referees. This is the only reason for it.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't...
They still don't like it today, by the way. It's stuck with us all these years.
So it wasn't even part of the script. It just kind of came out naturally, just because of an inconvenience of the bill. Wow.
It looked good on TV.
Yeah.
It looked good on the movies. In the movies, yeah.
So with that, tell us a little bit about that tournament. I mean, that was probably some of the best arm wrestlers in the world in that, I would think.
It was the most phenomenal tournament I think I've ever been to, bar none. I was just talking to a good friend, Lori Cole, who I've known since I've gotten the sport. She's got a lot of the memorabilia and paperwork and film and stuff of that event. And I was just talking to her yesterday that somebody told me one time there was 72 people in my weight class. And Lori laughs and kind of says, there was a lot more than that. She's actually has all the paperwork, all the sign-ups, everything. So picture that tournament going in one day, and actually if you wanted to win it, you actually had to beat your last opponent at 6:30 the next morning.
Oh, wow.
It was like a 21-hour tournament.
Jeez.
So many people showed up at that event, it was just ridiculous. Yeah. From all over the world, too. It wasn't just the United States and Canada. They came from everywhere for that event.
Other than yourself, who would you consider the greatest arm wrestler of all time?
Well, there's no doubt in anybody's mind worldwide it would have to be John Berzink, who's now retired. John has been able to train and travel around the world like nobody else, so he's got to actually have the opportunity to train with every hand, every size arm, every kind of power, every kind of technique. I mean, John is amazing what he was able to accomplish, and mainly because of his training. He worked for Delta Airlines. I don't know if you know that, but he worked for Delta Airlines. He could go anywhere in the world for $1.
Oh wow, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had that opportunity, I would have been the greatest.
With you mentioned earlier about starting your own arm wrestling training camp. What was that like, the process of starting that up?
I already had such a massive following of people that when we put it out there to California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, we had people coming from all over that place. I've always wanted to give back what I've learned. I've always been a hands-on guy. I've always asked questions if I didn't know. I'm always learning every time even to this day, I'll go to a workout, for example, and everybody thinks I'm going to go there and I'm going to rip everybody's arm off and blah, blah, blah. But no, when I go there, I don't care if you're 150 pounds. I'm going there to learn. I'm going there to keep current. I'm going there to learn the different pressures, the different angles, the different when people are grabbing my hand. It doesn't really matter. So the putting on arm wrestling training camp was one of the greatest things for me because I had the honor to get out there and share this knowledge with so many people, including my competitors, to people I actually compete against.
You mentioned the 30-degree angle. What other tactics and strategies are some of your favorite in the sport of arm wrestling?
Number one strategy is to get your opponent out of position. Again, if they're, like when I beat Don Hollywood Underwood, Don was 336 pounds, the number 6 super heavyweight in the world. And I was 165 pounds. My goal that day when I beat Don was to get him out of position. I knew that if I got him out of position, I stood a chance of beating him, and that's exactly what happened. So the number one thing is get your opponent out of position.
With your AMC show, do they reach out to you, or how did that all get started, the game of arms?
Yeah, Matt Ritter and Ethan Prochnick, the executive producers of the Deadliest Catch, had contacted me saying they'd really want to come out and meet me and possibly film my training, my workout. And we agreed to that. They come out, they did some filming. But like right before that, they were actually at the Ryan Sheets Memorial Arm Wrestling Championships in Vegas, California. And that's where they were filming that competition because the networks in Hollywood really wanted a reality show for arm wrestling. All the major networks. So Matt Ritter, Ethan Prochnick, they came out with a couple of camera people and they filmed this championship. Well, I ended up beating Don Underwood that day in the overalls, and they took that and they actually pitched it before the networks in Hollywood. A year later, the beginning of the Game of Arms. Phenomenal, because our first episode on AMC had 1 million people watching it. The very first episode. It was pretty cool.
Kind of in a similar way, Tiger Woods or the Williams sisters, getting a lot of eyes on the TV. Do you feel that has helped the sport of arm wrestling regenerate some of the participants?
Oh, absolutely. Out of that fire became the WAL, the World Arm Wrestling League, and the fact that this has grown worldwide is because of the World Arm Wrestling League under the leadership of Steve Kaplan and some of the executive producers from the Game of Arms who went over there to work with them. It was like totally awesome. Like Ben Murray and Dan Alani, they both went over to the World Arm Wrestling League, and they started just going, expanding it to Europe, to Asia Pacific, to Canada. Yeah, it was a huge thing. Still continues to grow to this day because of that.
Who do you feel is going to be the next generation of arm wrestler? I mean, who, is on that cusp that, people might not be talking about, but with being an insider, about?
Oh, wow. I'm going to say, for sure, Devin Moret out of Canada. Devin is probably the next up-and-coming John Berzink, in my opinion. He's been arm wrestling since he's a kid. He's got everything that he needs to be the best that there is. I think he's the one that's going to continue that. He's already a legend, regardless. But, it is definitely Devin.
So the sport of arm wrestling, you feel, with shows like that and with the new league, are going to help it to grow and prosper?
Oh, absolutely. I believe the sport. The whole goal of the WAL is arm wrestling going for a year and have all these great tournaments. Their goal is to bring the best sponsors you can, promoters that you can get on their side, because they want to Steve Kaplan he's just a very smart individual. If you look him up, he's going to get the support that he needs to carry this thing on for a good decade or more.
Nice.
And I honestly believe that's exactly what's going to happen. I've never seen anybody come on board ever in this sport. I've been in this almost 40 years that is going to have that kind of support besides the WAL and Steve Kaplan.
So it sounds
people come and go. In fact, you don't know this, but when over the top of the place, there's a good chunk of change that went out that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But did you know that arm wrestling fell off the face of the map for many, many years and nobody understood why? And Kaplan's way beyond that.
So it sounds like he's building things the right way.
Exactly. He's building the stability we need in the sport. And my hope and my expectation is that they start removing all the stupid drugs and the enhancing garbage that they put in their bodies and allowing these people to be the champs, as it were. And I'm just hoping that Steve takes it that route because that's what needs to happen. We need to get rid of. We need to basically enforce the World Doping Agency's rules and have them followed. Or that. Either that or we have a natural class.
Exactly. Have the
like
two divisions.
Like they do in a lot of sports.
Exactly. You have the open category, and then you have the natural category. Yeah, I could see that.
That'd be awesome. And all those people that have been champions for years, worldwide, they're no longer going to be the champions if they start, putting all these tests out there.
Exactly.
Because people won't pass the test. And then people like me, the natural, the 62-year-olds will come in and do very well.
With sports in general, but specifically with arm wrestling, it takes a physical and a mental toll on you. Who is your rock? Who supports you emotionally and has been there for you?
My wife has been a great support on that, and I would just say, who's my support? Case number one, I'd have to say is the Lord Himself, because where would I be without Him? I think my greatest support is everybody that is there supporting me. There's not one particular individual that I would say, but the fact that people respect me and honor me and speak well of me, I think that's where I get a lot of that support.
You mentioned earlier about the vegetable and fruit pill that you take. What other sponsors do you have? What other products do you help support or advertise?
I don't. I left the supplementation industry back in 1996, and I'm not sponsored by like you sponsor the fruit, vegetables, and berries, but I faithfully use it because it's done so much for me as an athlete. We're supposed to eat 9 to 13 servings of fruits and veggies a day. Mm-hmm. Let's get real. Nobody does that. I know that every health institution in the world says the same thing. Eat your fruits and vegetables. Yep. But to be honest with you, it's time consuming, it's expensive, you got herbicide, pesticide problems, you got the fact that things aren't growing to full maturity. Juice Plus made sense to me because I wasn't going to get what I needed to get every day. And here we are today, since 1993, we have almost, I think it's 36 independent studies from various universities and laboratories that prove its effectiveness, that it is the next best thing to fruits, vegetables, and berries.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, that's in two ways. It's awesome that you're, sticking by your guns and believing in, not, focusing on the supplements, but on the real food. But but still willing to put out a good word there for products that you do believe in, like the Juice Plus. What is next for you?
I'm going to be turning 62 here on the 26th of January, and I'm just going to continue to, everybody wants you to retire, including my wife. And you know what I tell her is that, honey, God just isn't done with me yet. When I actually know that He wants me to move on, then I will retire from the sport of arm wrestling, making everybody happy. So I'm going to continue to do what I do and compete. I'm still not competing in my own age group because I want the challenge. And I feel that if I go into my age group, I'm not going to be challenged. So I still arm wrestle the 20 and 30-year-olds.
Along with participating in the sport, are you going to be doing a season 2 on Game of Arms, or maybe writing a book or anything to that extent?
Another great question. The Game of Arms second season, we were almost halfway through filming it, and the network in Hollywood, the big guys, the big cheeses, actually stopped all unscripted shows, so the Game of Arms came to an end. Would I write a book? Yeah, I'm not a writer. My wife's been trying to get me to do that for years and years. She thinks, she says, get a ghostwriter then.
Exactly.
Well, if somebody wants to become my ghostwriter, fine. Let him write the story. There's a great article actually came out. One of the best I think I've seen. The San Diego Magazine had a thing called The Reader. And one of the writers in that actually did, I think it was in like an 18-page, it's been years and years ago, about arm wrestling and myself and the guys that I trained. Very, very well written by Jeff Bouvier. I really appreciated him spending so much time with us. And then you've got, I think it's Polar Magazine did some pretty good articles on arm wrestling. I'm just not one to write. I'm really not. I mean, I love coaching, training, mentoring people. People come from all over the world just to show up and shake my hand and go through my personalized one-on-one training. And I still love doing that, and that's always open. And it's like, if I could just give that website out, armwrestlingtraining.com, if people want to look me up and get involved in that.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Give that out. Any social media, any of those type of, websites where people can learn more about you, learn more about the sport of arm wrestling. Definitely.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And if people want to look at our the amazing product I'm looking at, they can look at energynutrition.net. They can find out all about it. And I'm very excited about that because our company has been trying to develop a product for years and years that they finally finalized. I've been taking it for over a year. You know the importance of taking omega-3s,
yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, our company actually came out with a plant-based omegas 3, 5, 6, 7, and 9 in one capsule.
Oh, wow.
That's all. It has no fish. And, since you deal with so many people as athletes, especially as arm wrestlers, one of the best ways to deal with that aching pain that you're dealing with is omegas. And people don't get it.
Yeah.
For years and years, I stood behind Dr. Udo Erasmus's product and promoted that, and people benefited greatly. Now they can benefit even more by taking this new omega.
Yeah, it sounds excellent. Yeah, because definitely things like that, I mean, if they can help people and make their lives better, why not? I agree with you 100%.
Awesome.
So I have 2 questions before I let you go. One,
okay.
Will you be at the Arnold, because I know they do a lot of arm wrestling up there.
Okay, as far as the Arnold's concerned, if somebody wants to sponsor me to go get qualified, sure, I would love to compete at the Arnold again. But, mainly you have to travel to a competition, win that competition, and you're paying completely for that. I mean, there's no money being given. I arm wrestle for money. I don't arm wrestle for titles. My incentive, the thing that drives me, is the fact that they got money in competition. So I don't really give a hoot about some titles, some trophies, some medallion. So if somebody wants to sponsor me, I would love to compete in the Arnold.
Oh, I was figuring they would have you out at one of the booths as a celebrity because they'll do that a lot. Well, they'll bring in a celebrity to sign autographs and take pictures. One of the different companies.
So they're more than welcome to do that. I'll be waiting for their call.
Excellent. And then the other one, before I let you go, of course, besides arm wrestling, I'm also a big fan of professional wrestling. Scott Norton was a person who competed in both. Did you ever compete against him? What was he like?
I never competed against Scott that I can remember. Now, I have to say, we have a lot of, over the years, we've had a lot of super large pullers in this sport. Super heavyweight people. Scott Norton was the fastest, bar none, any arm wrestler in the world as a super heavyweight. He was phenomenal, and he had all this power behind him. And he had the right frame of mind. It's like that mental focus. Scott had everything he needed to become the champion of Over the Top, and he was. He won Over the Top. He still has his trophy to this day.
Nice. I appreciate that story because, like I said, big fan of his and big fan of arm wrestling, and hopefully our fans will want to learn more about arm wrestling. I'd like to thank Alan Fisher, our guest. Before you go, could you tell us those websites again, Alan?
Sure. Our plant-based nutrition and fruit, vegetable, and dairy capsules can be found at energynutrition.net. And then if anybody wants to get trained in the sport of arm wrestling, one-on-one, face-to-face training, go to armwrestlingtraining.com.
Excellent.